Warm welcome to the show. Thank you so much for staying tuned on Smart 24 TV. We drive your business. My name is Anthony Sabale and I am your host. Now, this is Financial Markets. We air every weekday from Monday to Friday at exactly 10 a.m. And the show is proudly sponsored by OTEX East Africa. OTEX East Africa is a trading platform for different stock exchanges and, of course, the exchange traded funds on treasury bond markets within East Africa. OTEX East Africa is saying you can do something new today by simply dialing *292# and following the prompts. You can register, you can, of course, get to buy and sell treasury bonds. And, of course, that is across East Africa in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. OTEX is regulated by the Capital Markets Authority of Uganda and, of course, opens their doors at exactly 15 past 8 a.m. and closes at 15 past 3 p.m. East African Standard Time. With OTEX East Africa, we are saying my money, my future under Zabu, and you can do something absolutely new. Let's get right into the business. Of course, today we have a lot of information for you. And of course, some of this is concerning of our local markets here in Uganda, how they performed yesterday on Monday, opening the new week. Yes, it's a budget week, and that, of course, also has a lot of influence on the financial markets because remember, the national budget, at least most part of it, has a debt financing, where in the markets here, we deal with debt financing a lot. That is, of course, in the treasury bond market, as well as within the other market segments where we have corporate bonds and the like. So definitely the budget has a lot to do with what is going to be discussed in this week's financial markets, in this week's, of course, edition of Business News, a lot here in Uganda. But elsewhere in Africa, of course, in the United States, the debt ceiling talk is still ongoing. But of course, now the deal has been already closed. The debt ceiling in the United States has been raised from 31 trillion. Who knows where we would be heading? But of course, the United States is not about to default on their loans just because of a debt ceiling. So that is something that the Congress and the Senate have been able to sort out, as we're going to see later on in the show. But first, let's look across African stock exchanges and see how they performed on Monday. Starting off with Nigeria. Nigeria in West Africa lost 13.79 points. Its very first loss in the week. And of course, this was on the second day of trading. Now, the Nigeria Stock Exchange has at least close to 156 equities that are listed. And currently, the market capitalization is at as high as 30.4 trillion Nigerian naira. On Monday, at least, we had about 122 Nigerian Stock Exchange listings that participated in trading on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The day, fortunately, ended with 26 gainers and unfortunately 28 losers. NEM Insurance Company led the gainers with a 10% appreciation in price, closing at 5.5 Nigerian naira. Now, NEM is listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange since the 5th of September 1990, one of the oldest listings we have on Nigerian Stock Exchange, currently holding 27.6 billion Nigerian naira, about at least 0.091% of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. On Monday, the stock added 0.5 Nigerian naira, closing off the day at 5.50 Nigerian nairas. And this was making the company the biggest gainer for the day. Now, the NEM Insurance Company is one of the most best performing companies in the long run and in the short run on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Take a look at, for example, their year-to-date performance currently stands at 22.2% gains, and their weekly performance now at 15.8% gains, whereas the 4-week performance stands at 20.9%. All these appreciations from the NEM Insurance Company on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Other companies included the Omatech Ventures at 10% appreciation. We did have the corn oil at least gain about 9.94%, and the MRS Oil Nigeria at least also at 9.94% on their value. In as far as the losers are concerned, John Holt Company came out at the bottom with a depreciation of 9.95% and closed at 1.72 Nigerian naira per share. The company was also not alone on the losing side. We did have Wapik Insurance Company, a drop of 8.7%, and the Courtville Business Solutions, at least drop of 9.8% as well on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Nigerian Stock Exchange All Share Index, a benchmark of performance from the Nigerian Stock Exchange, tracking the 156 stocks, at least lost 13.79 points on Monday and closed off the day, at least with a total value of 55,806 points. Closing off the day there at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, representing a 1-week gain of 5.35% and currently 4-week gains of 6.37%. Nigeria Stock Exchange is one of those stock exchanges that have done really well in the recent past, especially looking at the performance of their benchmark index. The index has been doing quite well despite the shocks in the economies across Africa, especially during COVID-19 pandemic. It was one of those most resilient stock exchanges that we've seen on the African continent and continues to be one of the most trusted markets. However, it's not the biggest and not yet about to be one, with quite a number of stocks like Egypt and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange coming ahead of the game. Now, let's move on across South Africa and see what the Johannesburg Stock Exchange had as participation in their first weekday of trading. Now, Johannesburg has at least 421 stocks that are currently listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. On Monday, the day ended with the stocks closing at least about a total volume of about 247 million shares that were traded. In as far as the turnover or the monetary value from these shares is concerned, we had at least about 17.8 billion South African rand that was accrued from these sales. In aggregate, 327 Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed equities did participate in trade on Monday and closed the day at least 133 gainers and 167 losers, in a day that seemed to be much better in terms of at least the performance of the index. However, there was a drop in percentages in as far as the volumes and turnover are concerned on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Regarding the equities that did have movements on the market in terms of price, we had the trade hold coming as the top most gainer at 28.41% appreciation in price, closing off the day at least 8.0 South African rand per share. The Rand Gold Explore Company Corporation at least closed at 21.25% appreciation. On the losing side, however, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange saw the Stefunati stocks come in as one of the losers at a 16.67%, but Matengu Mining Company this time came out at the bottom with a 36% depreciation in price, closing at 1.6 South African rand. And now I know you must be questioning. Yesterday, during the show, we mentioned Matengu Mining Company as the top gainer on Friday, and today they are appearing at the bottom. Well, because it's a small priced stock, when you look at their price, 1.6 shillings, even the slightest movement in that price will translate into a huge percentage. Take an example. For example, yesterday, they just dropped off just about 0.9 South African rand and closed at 1.60 South African rand. That translated into 36% depreciation in price. So those are some of the things you need to know when you're trading. You don't get to judge very quickly when it comes to these stocks, especially that have very small prices. Any slight movement does affect the stock price with a great magnitude for the stocks with a small price. In as far as trade is concerned, Redefined Properties was the biggest mover for the day, with a volume of at least 15.3 million shares that were recorded on the first weekday of trade. When you look at the total volumes here, we had Pepco Holdings at least coming with 15.1 million contribution. The First Rand Bank also came in with a 12.6 million shares that were traded, and KAP Industrial Holdings at 11.7 million shares. The J203 dropped off at least about 523 points and closed at 76,602 points on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And that's the performance, my friend, from the South African Stock Exchange. Zimbabwe continued to rally markets here in Africa with 9,919 points that were added to their benchmark index on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Zimbabwe Stock Exchange really remains one of those stock exchanges that have maintained a very powerful performance. Of course, thanks to their mining companies and corporations and so on that keep the stock going. Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, comparing this day, however, Monday with Friday, witnessed a decline slightly in the volume at 46%, and the decline in the turnover at 20% on their exchange. In aggregate, we had 26 Zimbabwe Stock Exchange listings participate in the trade on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, ending the day with 25 gainers, impressively no losers at all. The top gainer was First Mutual Properties that led the gainers by a 15% appreciation in price, closing at 50.6 pounds per share on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Let's come back to East Africa and start off with Uganda. The Uganda Securities Exchange did trade yesterday on Monday. The markets were open, and out of the 18 listings, at least 4 participated in trade, and the day ended with 2 gainers and absolutely 7 losers on the market, with the 2 gainers being Jubilee Holdings Limited and Stanbic Bank Uganda. Jubilee Holdings Limited appreciated by 2.5%, and this was closing off at 4,949 Ugandan shillings. Whereas the Stanbic Bank Uganda stock at least appreciated by 0.23% and closed off the day at 26.00 Ugandan shillings per share. On the losing side, unfortunately, things got worse for Bank of Baroda Uganda stock. Now the stock has dropped 78.25%. This is very unfortunate for Bank of Baroda Uganda. I don't even know what to say. A stock losing as much as 78.25%. Now, we're not talking about a stock that is at 1.5 shillings and has lost about maybe 1 to 3 shillings, and now it has, obliterated the stock. No, a stock that was valued at 75 shillings a week ago, and now is at 14 Ugandan shillings. And this is Bank of Baroda Uganda. Could the bonus issue be the cause? Most definitely. Remember, Bank of Baroda Uganda yesterday on Monday issued extra stock, and the bank needed, of course, to boost their capital requirements in order to meet the minimum capital requirements for Bank of Uganda by 2024. All banks are required to have at least a capital of about 150 billion. Now, that is from the former 25 billion, and this is where Bank of Baroda was standing before the emerging of this new regulation. When you have a stock at least about 75 shillings and you want to issue bonus shares, definitely you have to scale it down. This is, of course, to attract investors, because bonus issues are given to shareholders that already have shares within the company. And this is what Bank of Baroda Uganda did. It went on the exchange, requested for approval for the issuance of these bonus shares, and they were approved. And the Capital Markets Authority was the other regulator or the other body on top to actually get to authorize this bonus issue. Now, this bonus issue was issued yesterday. Over about 12.5 billion was collected, and Bank of Baroda Uganda sold each share at 10 shillings only to the shareholders of the Bank of Baroda Uganda stock. Now, this drop in price shouldn't be scaring, because the stock price could go back up. This is just a one-day thing, and these are only shareholders that are trading amongst, because you have the stock and then the shareholder. So there's no kind of what we call the open trade that we have on a normal market day. So I don't think this should set any alarms as per now, but the stock currently of Bank of Baroda Uganda is at 14.00 Ugandan shillings. Consequently, also their market capitalization has dropped to at least a tune of 35 billion, representing at 0.197% of the equity market on the Uganda Securities Exchange. Shares outstanding are at 2.5 billion, and the 35 billion market capitalization is currently what we are counting on the Bank of Baroda stock. The 81% stock value has been lost since the 8th of May to date. That is how much value we've lost in the last 1 month. However, Bank of Baroda is still maintaining their fourth position in as far as the most traded on stocks is concerned on the Uganda Securities Exchange. So that's something we can rely on and probably have our trust still in this particular bank, that is Bank of Baroda. Elsewhere, in the gainers, rather the losers list, we had the Nation Media Group at least also lose 5.58%, and East African Breweries Limited shedded off at least 2.02%, whereas the Equity Bank Limited stock at least lost 1.09%, and the KCB stock lost 0.73%, whereas the Kenya Airways stock lost 0.58%. In as far as the all-share index is concerned, the index at least dropped off 14.71 points, of course, consequent of losses on Bank of Baroda mainly, and this was dropping to 1,032 points, closing off the Monday trade. Other participants were MTN Uganda, who traded 20,700 shares, as well as Uganda Craze at 6,500 shares that were traded. And Bank of Baroda, of course, compounding that with the 7,600 shares as well that were traded on Monday. Trade on the Uganda Securities Exchange is open right now. Remember, we opened the trade at 9 a.m. and close at 1 p.m. East African time. And you can, of course, be able to access the market through a licensed stockbroker to get you that stock that you might need for your future gains. Let's move on to Nairobi Securities Exchange and have a look at the 66 listings on the busiest stock exchange in East Africa. Nairobi Securities Exchange saw at the end of the day at least about 47 listings out of the 66 participate in trade, and amongst these we did have 31 gainers and 5 losers. The 31 gainers were led by Nairobi Business Ventures. Generally speaking, this was a very good performance from the Nairobi Securities Exchange. That is, of course, stamped by the benchmark index performance, the all-share index, which soared at least about 2.41 points up to 106.09 points. Now, Nairobi Business Ventures led the gainers at 9.37%. Appreciation in price closing off the day at 2.80 Ugandan shillings, Kenyan shillings per share. Tasini Tea and Coffee at least also added 8.37%, and the Flame Tree Group Holdings stock added at least a value of 7.94%, whereas the Liberty Kenya Holdings Group added 7.5% of value on their shareholders. On the losing side, Trans-Century East Africa list came out last with an end-of-day price depreciation of 6.98%, down to a price of 0.8 Kenyan shillings per share. The Car and General Company at least lost 4.73%, and the Bamburi Cement Company at least lost 0.59% on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Regarding the performance of the NSE market index, like I mentioned, it soared, and therefore now weekly performances are at gains of 1.55%, and when you look at the monthly performances as well, they are at a gain of at least 8.62%, which is quite something to celebrate on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. We are still, of course, pushing for the integration of the East African capital market to ease access. We want to be very much diversified in our portfolios, that you have these stocks from Kenya, these stocks from Tanzania, stocks from Uganda, and that, of course, alleviates risks and also gives you more exposure in the market. And the more exposed you are, the much more chances of your portfolio improving and you getting back some gains. Now, away from Nairobi, let's fly into the United States and have a look at Wall Street's performance on Monday. Now, US stocks were quite mixed on Monday morning as investors digested the weaker than expected manufacturing data ahead of next week's Federal Reserve's meeting. The S&P 500, or the Standards & Poor's 500, which is the benchmark to most, at least, investors, was up by 0.26%. And the Dow Jones Industrial Average for the top 30 stocks in the United States edged downwards at 0.23%. And that was over less than 1,100 points. And the Nasdaq Composite advanced at 0.47% during the midday trading. Strong job numbers and passage of the United States debt ceiling bill sent major indices higher last week. Crude oil prices as well were higher, but paired earlier gains after Saudi Arabia on Sunday at least said it will slash at least its oil output by another 1 million barrels per day, starting in the month of July. The world's top oil exporter is going to, be on its alone to see that we volunteer a cut. And as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and its allies agreed on, sticking to the current oil production target through the 2024 year at least their meeting last weekend. US benchmark WTI crude futures were up over 1% at least 72.62 US dollars per barrel on Monday, while Brent crude futures, the global benchmark, at least added 1.33% and to trade at least at 77.14 US dollars per barrel. That's it, my friend. Thank you so much once again for tuning in. Smart 24 TV. Remember, the show Financial Markets is brought to you by Altex East Africa. Altex is a trading platform, has developed a trading platform known as Zabu. Under Zabu, you have, of course, access to the market using your mobile wallet. You can simply dial *292# to learn more about the products, to be able to invest, buying or selling, and to be able to, of course, register with Altex East Africa. Altex East Africa, you can do something new. And that's it, my friend. It's a Tuesday, and I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. We have a lot, of course, ahead of the day in business, and Smart 24 TV is going to be bringing you all that at the comfort of your home, in the comfort of your office. So stay tuned for more of your business. Smart 24 TV is saying you're still driving your business. My name is Anthony. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Bye for now.